When I started my first business, it kind of happened on accident. I've told you guys some of this story before, but it was very organic the way that I first became a vocal coach, a singing coach. People approached me, and I had never even thought about having a business like that. And so it was amazing to have this kind of organic lead funnel coming into me. But what it means is that I was completely unprepared for what it actually means to be a business owner. I hadn't done any of the research. I didn't know anything about what I was getting myself into in reality. And, it means that when I went to start the Tech Savvy Academy, start a business on purpose, I was really unprepared for what I would need to do. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made is probably a mistake that you've made at some point or maybe are still making right now. The mistake that I'm talking about is copying other people's successful strategies. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. But before we dive into this, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. Okay, so one of the reasons that I think, for me at least, that I did this, partially, like I said, it comes from the fact that I just really didn't know what it meant to be a business owner, especially in the online space. Because when I was doing vocal coaching, this was before technology had really caught up to the reality of trying to have vocal lessons virtually. So they were always in person. And so the issues that I ran into were totally different than the ones that I've run into as an online business owner. For example, I always felt like I had to live in a kind of centrally easy to access location for my students. I had to have a space dedicated in my house to be able to, host those sessions and not have it encroach too much in our personal lives, our personal space, things like that. And I did eventually get to a point where, I wanted to grow beyond what was organically coming to me. And so at the time I did things like Groupon and stuff like that. But those strategies don't in any way apply to the Tech Savvy Academy or my current business model. I'm not going to go on Groupon and sell Trello consulting on Groupon. That's just not where that audience looks. And so, and honestly, when I started Tech Savvy Academy, that's not even where my focus was. So I just had no idea what to do. And, I think there was also this totally self-imposed pressure to achieve a certain level of success quickly, right? Not just because I wanted to be successful, but because I thought I was seeing all these other people go from zero to successful, and when I say successful, things like at least making six figures a year. Let's just leave it at that. There are definitely people who I saw that were making way more than that. They were having 5-figure months, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what does that even look like? Like at the time, I had never had that kind of income. And so I couldn't even fathom. It sounded like they were, multimillionaires, even though in reality they're not. But I think that there was this perception that, if you follow the right strategy, if you do things the quote right way, then it should happen quickly. And if it doesn't happen quickly, that means either you have the wrong idea or you're just not cut out for it or whatever. Like it's always something beyond the strategy. And we've talked about this to a point when I did an episode where we touched on a lot of stuff related to Pat Flynn, because he talks about this kind of stuff a lot. In fact, it might have been actually my other podcast, the Success Through Community podcast, where I talked about it, because I was talking about his book, Will It Fly? And, just the idea of how you don't want to just throw spaghetti on the wall. You want to actually do your market research and all that stuff. So maybe I didn't ever talk about it here. I don't know. The point being, though, is that first off, there are as many versions of a quote successful strategy as there are people, because no matter what you do, you're going to need to find your version of. And I think for me, for the longest time, because I just had no idea where to start, I thought, well, I'm just going to look at that other person's strategy, their blueprint that in many cases they were selling in some fashion, and I'm just going to plug and play. I'm going to look at exactly what they're doing and just put my copy into what they're doing. And in a lot of cases, I even found myself kind of using their copy and just like replacing certain words. I mean, In hindsight, looking back at it, I don't know why I thought that would work, but you still see people all the time selling their exact strategy for things, for YouTube growth, for Instagram growth, for growing a coaching business, for, all these things. And they mean well. Okay. I'm not in any way trying to say that they're, trying to sell you something that they know isn't going to work. They mean well. They are trying to teach you best practices and things like that. But what I have found is that the business mentors and coaches out there who, 5 years ago were selling their exact strategy or using that as a freebie, right? Like follow this exact plan and do all this and you're going to have a huge launch or whatever. This is back when that free challenge launch strategy was so huge. And I did it multiple times and it was always exhausting and it was rarely successful. And even when it was successful, it was nowhere near the level of success that I was given the impression it should be, right? So it was incredibly exhausting and almost made me stop doing the online business thing because I just thought, I can't keep up this level of energy and whatever in order to try to grow my business, especially if I'm not getting the return on all that energy investment that I was putting in. And I know that things have been shifting a lot over the past few years, especially in the online space. And I'm so grateful that it has, because that super high energy challenge launch kind of strategy is just not really seeming to work for anybody anymore. I think, maybe there are some people who are still doing it successfully, but people are turning to more of like that, I don't want to say low energy, but like balanced energy kind of evergreen option. And for me, it wasn't until I made the decision to strategize into YouTube, which even there, I'm not following any specific other person's strategy, right? But leaning into YouTube as more of that evergreen, balanced energy marketing strategy, that's when things started to click for me. And I'm not even saying that you should do that necessarily because, it might not be what clicks for you. But I was doing some research on this, as I always do when I want to talk about topics like this. I want to see what other thought leaders in specifically the business world have to say about stuff like this. So I've got a couple of quotes here that I'm going to highlight that are from some of my favorites out there in the business world. And surprisingly, there's no Mel Robbins and there's no Pat Flynn. And actually, there's no James Clear in this mix either. But there's some of the others that I really love. And, I just want to talk about like how these things help to guide us towards what our strategy is. Because let me tell you, no matter what, your strategy, it's going to be completely unique to you. So let's look at a couple of these quotes. The first quote that I want to look at here is from Brene Brown. It's actually from a book of hers that I not only haven't read, but didn't know existed. So, that's going on my TBR list. But it's from her book called The Gifts of Imperfection. And then the subtitle is Let Go of Who You Think You're Supposed to Be and Embrace Who You Are, which, that's a powerful title to a book because that's huge. But the quote that I pulled from this book is, she says, authenticity, because we were talking a second ago about how important authenticity has become in the online world now. We don't want cookie cutter influencers. We don't want to hear the same thing from everyone. And if they're talking about the same topic, we want to hear it from their perspective, right? We want to know what that individual has to say. And 9 times out of 10, we're following a particular person or entity online, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, because we like their unique perspective, which means, guys, you have to have a unique perspective, which you do, but then you have to lean into it. So what Brene says is authenticity is the daily practice of letting go who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. Choosing authenticity means cultivating the courage to be imperfect. And that hit me really hard because I think that was maybe at the root of why I leaned so heavily on other people's strategies early on. Because especially moving into the online space, I felt somewhat of an expert in the vocal coaching space. Definitely not in the career of being a singer because it's always kind of stayed more of a hobby thing for me. But because I had been singing for so long, I felt really confident when it came to the vocal techniques and all of that sort of thing. And so I felt confident in those conversations. And when somebody came to me, I felt like I understood after a while why they were coming to me for help and how I could help them. But moving into the online space, it was kind of like, okay, I know that I'm really good at this kind of stuff. And I know that the way that my brain works, other people have, because there was an organic aspect to it, even within that side of the business. People come to me because they see that I kind of look at the puzzles of how to track things and how to organize things and things behind the scenes in business and whatever. I know how to do that for myself, and I think in a way that is unique to other people. But I felt this intense imposter syndrome as far as presenting myself as an expert in the space. And I still don't see myself as an expert in the space. I've been doing this now professionally for 5 years, but at the same time, like, I still feel like, well, I have so much to learn. But I'm starting to realize that the fact that I know that I have so much to learn is actually a good thing. And I think when I leaned into that, idea of imperfection, of like, I don't have to necessarily have all of the answers in the moment, but I know how and where to get the answers. I know how to do that kind of research. And, while technically any of my clients could go to Google and search for something, they may not have the background and experience to know the right words to search, the right terminology, the right keywords, but they also might not know how to translate it. It's why things like AI are not really a threat to me in my business, because I use AI myself to help me, come up with certain things, especially if it's like in a tool that's like in my corporate life and I need to build formulas and stuff like that. I will absolutely go to AI to help me with that. But you have to know still how to interpret what AI is telling you, right? It's not just a copy paste kind of situation when it's in this world. So I think recognizing that, yes, I have imperfections in this space. I know what I'm talking about, but I certainly don't know everything. Leaning into those things and not seeing that imperfection as a hindrance, but seeing it as a way for me to continue to grow and learn and be able to serve my clients better, that helped me to show up so much more authentically. And that's why you'll notice that on my YouTube channel, when I'm doing tutorials and stuff like that, often I leave in when things don't go as planned. I mean, it depends on the tutorial if I'm trying to keep it kind of short and sweet and, just a quick tip kind of thing. But if it's more of like one of my lives or something where I'm trying to show you how to kind of think through how to strategize when you're building a Trello board or something like that, I do show you when the test doesn't go well and, I have to troubleshoot it, because the reality is that that is a part of what I have to offer, is showing people how to troubleshoot when things don't go right. Because if I only show you here's how it works perfectly, and then it doesn't work perfectly for you, well, then you're going to feel like you don't know what to do next. And, maybe you can't do this, right? So leaning into the side of things where I don't know everything and showing you how I figure it out, I think is a part of showing up as an expert in the space. And so, this quote really kind of spoke to me in that way, because I do have to lean into that as a daily practice for me when I'm meeting with clients and they ask for something and I'm like, oh, I don't know if that's possible. I'm no longer afraid to say, I don't know if that's possible, but I will find out, because I don't feel like I have to be perfect and know everything all the time. And so I think that right there has really been a part of my marketing strategy, even within the tutorials on the channel, is showing that authenticity in the space and like, hey, this didn't work as planned, but here's how we're going to address it. So that really spoke to me in a really deep way. And I just wanted to encourage you guys to think about it from whatever perspective you're coming from. How can you lean into your imperfections within your area of expertise and not see it as something you need to hide or, be afraid of, and be able to only put that best foot forward? Because I guarantee you that whoever it is that you're talking to when you are doing your marketing, wherever you're actually posting on Instagram or, wherever, your audience doesn't want to just see a perfect, polished, finished product. They want to understand. They want to see some of those imperfections. And so I think that's part of why when I would take somebody else's strategy and like try to cookie cutter copy paste it. I'm primarily thinking of, social media strategies and things like that, and like the emails that go along and the timing of everything, and just take this blueprint and do a post just like this on this day. And then, on day 2, you want to make sure you say this. And on day 3, send an email that says that, like trying to follow their exact system that worked for them. I don't know. I mean, I understand why I leaned into it, but I don't know why, like looking back at it logically, I assumed that was going to work for me. Honestly, I kind of doubt if that exact strategy works for them every time. They probably have to tweak it as they go every time. And if you are just plug and play following their strategy, then you're not learning how to tweak things, right? And so this next quote that is from Seth Godin, it's not from a particular book. It's just attributed to him everywhere that I saw it online. So he probably said it in a podcast or a blog post or something. But it's kind of become my guiding principle as far as how I figure out what my strategy is and how I came to the strategy that I have right now. And what he said was, and this is so true, the only thing that all successful people have in common is that they're successful. So don't waste your time copying the successful strategies of others. And absolutely, like, look at the people who are successful in the space that you want to be successful. Look for the people who are successful, but also have the values that matter to you. And if you don't know what values matter to you yet, well, then you need to start there. What are the pillars of your mission? What are the guiding factors behind your business? Maybe that's integrity, generosity, kindness, whatever they are. Look for the people who are successful, ideally in some industry similar to yours, because then at least you're going to know that the audience that they're reaching is the same audience that you want to be reaching. And so, well, if they're focused on Instagram, then Instagram might be a good place for you. Or if they're focused on YouTube, then YouTube might be a good place for you. They will give you some of that guidance based on what's working for them and where they're finding their audience. But look at a bunch of those people and look at the different strategies that they're employing. Like, one of the things that I love about Pat Flynn is that when he releases one of his books, he doesn't just release a book, he releases an online course to go with it. A free course, but something that really kind of sucks you in a more active way into what he's teaching you in the book. And I kind of love that because, like, I'm a very kinesthetic learner. I don't learn as much from just reading or listening to a book as I do when I have exercises to go along with it or questions to ask myself and kind of write down. This is another place where, like, Brendon Burchard did this with his book, High Performance Habits. He didn't have a course to go along with it, but at the end of each chapter, there were specific questions for you to kind of ask yourself. So he was getting you engaged in, thinking about your business and what you were doing in connection, like in context with what he was talking about and teaching you. And so taking different strategies like that, finding different ways that, I love how Mel Robbins shows up on her social media is that, she's sometimes polished when she's doing her podcast. She's dressed a certain way and she's got her makeup done and she's in a studio space and stuff like that. But that is only one part of how she shows up. She has all of her reels and YouTube shorts and stuff that she does where sometimes she's just taking her morning walk or she's sitting on the couch or, whatever it is. And I actually saw, I can't remember if it was in one of her podcast episodes or something, but I remembered her saying that when she feels she looks her worst, that's when her posts do their best. And I kind of love that because she's showing up so authentic. And, for me as a viewer, like, I do find myself having a tendency to watch, not that I think she ever looks her worst, but you know what I'm saying? Like, when she feels like, oh, her hair's disheveled and she's just wearing her glasses and she's not in the best lighting and whatever. Because my perspective from that, as a creator myself, but also just, from her is that, well, she had something so important to say that she needed to stop and say it right where she was. She didn't want to wait until she could get into a polished setting. She just needed to say it right now. And so I kind of subconsciously assumed that must be more important. And so I love that about what she does. And so that's why some of my content here is done a little bit more polished with lighting and the right microphone and the camera and all of that. And some of it is just recorded from my phone sitting out on my back porch, because both of those things have a place in my business and how I'm showing up online. So you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm taking the things that I know these strategies work for other people, but I'm not just trying to take one person's full strategy. I'm seeing things that I like and I'm plugging it into my own strategy. And by doing that, I am creating my own unique strategy. And that's what's been working for me. And so that's given me the freedom to, back off of places like Instagram where I just don't feel that connected and aligned. And I don't want to put the energy into it, because that's not where my energy is going to get the most ROI for me. That may shift and change over time as what I'm putting out into the world shifts and changes over time. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, you take what works for other people. Yes, find people who are successful, and so those strategies are working for them, and then pick and choose and kind of patchwork your own thing together. And then something that Marie Forleo said, and I never know if it's Forleo, I don't know. I always say her name wrong, but we all know she is. She started the B School. She's huge in the online coaching space. And she specifically said, and this is attributed to her, just like with Seth Godin, and a lot of people have echoed this, but I liked the way she worded it. She said, no other person ever has or ever will have the unique blend of talents, strengths, and perspective that you have. And that is 100% true of every single person. We all have, even if we experience the same thing that we're talking about, this is why I was saying earlier, even if a bunch of different people are talking about the same topic, they're all going to talk about it in a different way because of their own unique life experiences, their own gifts and talents and things like that. And so, the people that we tend to find ourselves following and watching and going to for certain concepts and certain topics and things like that is because we have learned that we appreciate their perspective because of their lived experience, right? And you have that too. You may not feel like it. You may not have had some, crazy experience in your life, but anything and everything that you have gone through and walked through in your life is feeding your perspective. Even, for example, for me, when it comes to things like something so specific and technical like Trello, I love different tools like this because, yes, there are best practices, but this is why I always say, and I say this to my clients constantly, there is no right or wrong way to do this. I'm going to show you my way of doing it, but my way of doing it is 100% based on my experiences, based on my talents, my strengths, and my weaknesses. And this is why I build things the way that I do. So there is no right or wrong way to make something happen, to create a specific Trello board. How does your brain want to see it, right? How do you think through the process? Do you think it through in stages, or do you think it through in categories, right? It's going to absolutely determine how you build your board and how you build out your process. It all comes from those different talents and skills and life experiences. So yeah, I mean, this concept is echoed by a lot of people, but I really loved the way that Marie put it here because, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Nobody else is going to have all of the same experiences as you. No matter how you're showing up or where you're coming from, there's always going to be room in the space that you're going into, even if it feels overly saturated, which at this point, I can't think of an industry that isn't overly saturated. And then kind of building on that, this last quote that I want to highlight is from Amy Porterfield. And she said this in an episode of her podcast a couple of years ago. And she titled that episode, "Should Your Passion Stay a Hobby or Become a Business?" And this is a topic that I have talked about a lot over the years, because even back when I was vocal coaching, because, like I said, I never really got into like super professional performing as a singer. I did some stuff that I got paid for, and so it was technically a business. But, as far as being a performer, I made the decision to keep it as a hobby and something that I enjoyed doing and loved doing, and so that I didn't lose any of that aspect of it trying to pursue it as a career, as a business, personal opinion. And so that might be true of, the things that you're trying to do as a business. Maybe it really should just be a fun hobby. And guess what? You can still earn a little income even if it's a hobby, but you're just going to treat it in a different way. And so the quote that she said, though, is, rather than asking yourself if you're passionate about your business idea, because passion fades, guys, right? She didn't say that. This is me, an aside. Passion fades, just like our emotions. We can't base everything on how we're feeling about something. So that passion can't be the driving force all the time. It's what initiates your business. So she said, rather than asking yourself if you're passionate about your business idea, try asking, what skills do you have right now that you can add value to the world with? Then look for ways to hone these skills and become so good at them that you can't be ignored. And I think, like, for me, this, like, I hadn't seen this quote until now, but this is kind of what happened for Tech Savvy Academy, because what I'm passionate about and what got me starting the Tech Savvy Academy in the first place is I'm passionate about helping solopreneurs, primarily women, but honestly, at this point, it's more just about the people who are trying to go it alone and do their own thing and figure it all out and wear all the hats, even when they don't have all of the skill sets right yet. That's where I'm passionate. I really, really want to work with solopreneurs and help them figure out how to make it happen, how to do it. But just because I'm passionate about that particular demographic doesn't mean that that's necessarily where I should start. Maybe I need to get to a place where I can build up the business and have the presence that I need to have online, have the trust factor, have the authority in the space before I can figure out what it looks like to translate that to really helping solopreneurs. And so, that's when I started realizing, okay, maybe I need to lean into what's coming at me, which is not only just Trello stuff, but like process and really figuring out what is it that I'm doing day to day? What are the workflows that are happening in my business? How can I simplify them? How can I automate them? And so this tended to lean me a little bit more towards smaller teams that I'm working with, because I think because that audience is more aware of their need in this space. I think solopreneurs don't necessarily yet think of what they're doing every day as a process. They don't think of it as a workflow, even though it all is. But when you're handing things off from person to person and, you're trying to kind of tag team something and work together with other people to get things done, you start to recognize those things as processes and saying, okay, well, I'm going to do this, and then you do this, and then this gets done, and then and then the customer's order is fulfilled or whatever. It's easier in a team setting to recognize those things for what they are. So I am passionate about solopreneurs, but I'm using the skills that I have, which is being able to identify those processes and workflows and simplify them and clarify them so that they can be defined and automated. I'm learning how to do that. I'm honing my skill set in that so that when I get to a place where I can really work with the demographic that I want to be with, I am so much more prepared to add value into their world as well. So we've talked about a lot of different strategy stuff where, and honestly, I thought this episode was going to be more about marketing strategy, but I really think it's about like everything, just your overall business strategy. Yes, marketing is a huge part of it, but also your business model and who you're working with and what you're doing. If you are just trying to copy someone else because you don't yet know where to start and what to do next, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it with tough love because I learned this the hard way myself. Then you're not ready to be jumping into the business yet. You might need to be in a research phase just a little bit longer. But like I said earlier, the things that you want to be looking at, especially in the marketing world, find the people who are reaching the audience that you want to be reaching. So at least figure out who that demographic is first. Find the people who are reaching them in maybe multiple places, but in multiple different ways. Hone in on, okay, where are they reaching those people? Is it primarily social media? Is it primarily YouTube? Is it primarily email? Figure out where they are talking to their audience the most successfully. And then just start watching them and regularly take notes about the things that they're doing, not exact things that they say and do, but the qualities, like break it down and reverse engineer a little bit why is it that I leaned towards watching that video of theirs versus somebody else's video or that other video of theirs? Like, what is it that is drawing you in? And keep notes on those things, on all these different people. I would say, I mean, I wouldn't have too many people to follow because that's just, you're going to get overwhelmed. But like, I don't know, maybe 5 people that you just really, really love what they're doing, and watch and look specifically for the commonalities. What are they all doing? Because if you see something that they're all doing, then that's something you need to find a way to incorporate in some fashion into what you're doing. And that's all in the marketing space. But when it comes to your business model and figuring out things like that, a lot of that's going to be trial and error. You can watch what other people are doing and in a similar fashion, like take little pieces of this and little pieces of that, and how are they making this happen, and what's effective for them here. But you definitely want to watch what other people are doing, patchwork something together, bits and pieces that not only are successful for them, but resonate with you and your values. And then look at that and say, okay, is there anything that I haven't addressed yet in this strategy? Because that is where you 100% plug in your authentic ideas and self. And those pieces may not work right away. They aren't strategies that have been proven. So you need to be flexible with the pieces of yourself that you're going to drop into your strategy, and recognize that that part is an experiment. Don't be firm and stiff on it. Be willing to be flexible and adaptable, because that is how you're going to figure out what your strategy is. And honestly, your strategy is going to be a work in progress forever. I have found what's working for me right now, but I am always paying attention to where I need to ebb and flow with it and find new twists and turns and ways to adjust and adapt to not only the changing markets and things like that, but also the changes in who I am and what I bring to the table. So I encourage you to do that as well. And if you have some people in mind already that you want to start following and watching in this way, drop who they are in the comments. I'm just curious to see who you guys are following and watching and wanting to emulate in some way as you grow your business. I hope that you liked that video, and more importantly, that you found it helpful. And if you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel and sharing it with a fellow solopreneur. And make sure that you check out the description for links for how we can connect and maybe even work together.